There's a great quote by Theodore Roosevelt, and it's titled "The Man in the Arena." I'd be paraphrasing, but it basically says the man in the arena should receive all the credit because he's the one covered in blood and dust and tears, who strives, who has the great enthusiasms. And when he succeeds, wins big, and when he fails, it's a total disaster. But better to be the man in the arena than those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. And that is a critic. I mean, there cannot be any lower career.
I read my Buddhism book and I thought, what's the next level? What is the final boss of carefree white girlness? And I thought, bingo, I'm going to fuck Russell Brand.
A lot of punters do go to comedy for that cathartic release. You don't want to become one of those people who says, well, you can't talk about comedy if you don't go and see it. But by the flip side of that is that you've got people talking about comedy from this position of authority who quite literally have never been to a show. And so they have this notion of what it's like, or what it must have been like on that night, or at some other gig, or at somebody's road show. And is that any better than Brian Williams saying that he jumped out of the helicopter in the war? It's kind of what it comes down to.
For good stand-up to occur, and for good exchanges of ideas to occur, people need to feel like they're free, and people need to feel like they're going to be judged, whether it's in a club or a pub or a gig or in a 40-seater in the room we were just in, they'll be judged in the context of that show.
Being homophobe. I like his name. What was it?
Racist.
Racist? I'm being racist against Americans. Oh, wow. Oh, well, that's fine. As long as it's against white Americans, it's cool, yeah?
If you're going to just take one isolated line from a comedian's act and take it on Twitter and use it to summon often mobs of people who barrage people with kind of attacks and troll them, then I don't think that's in any way, shape or form fair to stand-up comedians, and I don't think it's fair to the medium.
Someone tweets saying, I don't like what you said about footwear. I think it's really oppressive. There's no point in biting back. All you do is you turn up the volume and repeat yourself.
What I find fascinating and concerning about it is that a lot of the people who are engaging in the actual shaming, so the people who are digging up the tweet from 2011 or, tripping you up for that thing you said, I would assume consider themselves activists who want the world to change for the better. But by focusing on these moments of, indiscretion or ill-thought-out humour, they're effectively hitting pause on that person and saying, you are never going to get better. So for somebody like Trevor Noah, who's made some dumb jokes on Twitter that weren't particularly funny, but has since gone on and done some incredibly insightful political comedy, to say, well, we don't care about that because you said this one joke, just seems incredibly counteractive to everything that they want to achieve.
The only way to protect yourself is by repeating yourself. So the first time they might think, well, obviously it was only once. Maybe they're okay with footwear if we pressure them. Then you just say, no, actually, tonight, gumboots. And they're not just any gumboots, but, they're your mother's gumboots. And the thing is, they are vulva-shaped. How much do you want?
Actually going through the process of donating to Melbourne IVF. Donating sperm, which is something, a lot of gay men don't like doing. I figure if you're willing to make an anonymous donation to someone in a Flinders Street station cubicle, one make it more permanent, you know what I mean?
Some of you probably know that another one of my day jobs is feminist commentary, and, I sometimes wonder whether actually I'm not a very good feminist, and there's a reason for that. It's because I've never done roller derby.
Once upon a time, I was literally a cultural commentator that occasionally did an open mic spot. And now, I've done a couple of shows. So, I do. And, definitely recently I was discussing it with people. It's like, I feel like I'm going to be expected to say something as a cultural commentator, but also I consider myself a comedian now. And I feel like we sort of closed ranks a bit.
When it comes to social media is a uniquely idiotic and simplistic environment where sometimes, often, really intelligent stuff can float out, but I think often what defines its ebbs and flows is you get waves of outrage where people engage with a subject simplistically. They note that a bunch of people they like, that they agree with, have formed a simplistic view on things. They don't recognise that it's a simplistic view, but they'll grab onto it and then they'll follow.
You would think that you can't get away with as much as you could when there was no Twitter, there was no Facebook, when people couldn't just put a phone on their lap and record a whole show and post it if they chose. But again, it comes back to just not caring.
Fuck dogs.
There are things in this show that really people shouldn't post online, and we ask them, please don't post this thing online. But it all comes back to really not caring. And the comedy business for us has never changed in the sense that it's really just a tool to make people change the way they think.
I don't know that you realise you do this, but what you'll often do is you'll say, Toby, this is Christian. Christian, this is Toby. You're both gay. And then you kind of step back and you watch to see what we'll do, right? Which, I don't know if you've been to a dog park recently, is exactly what people do when they introduce their terriers, yeah?
If there's a list of 10 things that are permitted to be joked about, then people don't start to think about stuff. And there have been some fantastic jokes about terrible things which allow the audience member to then go away and think about that in a way that they hadn't. And these are people who are not necessarily going to read academic cultural criticism. So things like comedy and film and TV, that's their kind of forum for debate.
I used to live just off Hollywood Boulevard, and there was this guy, Red, who was like a local crack addict, and he used to haunt the bus stop. And I came out of my house one day, and Red was across the road, and he yelled out, "Hey, don't forget, I'm going to stalk you and murder you and bury you under the 99-cent store."
There are ways to use controversial subjects, whether it be sexual assault or even referring to controversial historical events, in jokes in a thoughtful, nuanced way. I think any joke that focuses on victims and makes people who are vulnerable feel worse off is wrong. And I don't think it should be done. I don't think using something like rape simplistically for shock value is a good idea for someone's career. But a lot of people have told a lot of stupid jokes. I don't think it's fair to vilify them as a rapist for telling a bad joke. That's what they've done. They've told a bad joke, but they're not in that same category as people who say, vilify sexual assault victims. So my instinct is that you should always be careful when you're grappling with controversial subjects. People get angry very, very easily around them. But if you've got something valuable to say, it's the most important stuff you can talk about.
As somebody who's fucked up on a number of occasions on the internet and been told about it, it's a good opportunity to learn and change. So I think there's a sort of middle ground somewhere where it is good to tell people, hey, you probably shouldn't have said that, here's why. But the problem with the shaming, the sort of outrage industry, there's no conversation. It's just, oh, that's it, that's the end of the road for you.
In fact, all critics should stop what they're doing and go and do something that puts them in the arena. Because being up in the cheap seats and saying, look, I've got to say from my position, I loved the Doug Anthony All-Stars show. It was edgy, it was biting, and I must say some of those harmonies are marvellous. The fuck do we care? Everybody's got an opinion. So I just send them that quote, the poor comedians, if they're worried about how many stars they've got. So, everybody's got a chocolate starfish, and, we only have one, and that's the only one you should really worry about. Because that colon cancer, that's something to think about.